earlier in this course, we spoke about taking stock of the parts of your digital service. In that lecture, we talked about the artifacts. Some of them were called business capabilities that express the need. We also talked about the purchase or the creating of applications to enable those capabilities. Then we went on to talk about the actual running of those applications in what we call application services. And then we close with the configuration of running applications so that they're optimized for your organization. In this lecture, we're going to talk more about how all of these pieces really fit together and how configuration management enables all of these components to function as one in order to bring value to your organization. What is the Common Service Data Model? It is a CMDB framework used to model digital services. I know I used one four-letter acronym to describe another. For those of you unfamiliar, CMDB stands for Configuration Management Database. What that does is it holds information about how assets are configured, and that includes how they interact with other assets throughout your organizations. You'd use the CMDB to create configurations that form more complex assets. And a type of complex asset that we're speaking about today is a digital service. Digital services are complex assets because they're not something you can just buy like a laptop or a chair for your office. They're made up of many assets that are configured to work together to meet a specific need. The CSDM provides the instructions for assembling these simple assets into complex ones called digital services. Let's look at the Common Service Data Model in bite-sized chunks first. The CSDM has 4 bite-sized chunks, and we're going to call these domains. The first domain is the foundation domain. Foundations describe your organization, such as teams, cost centers, even people. The second domain is called the design domain. In an earlier lecture, we spoke about business capabilities and business applications. Both of those objects live in that design section. Next, we have our technical parts in the Managed Technical Services domain. This is all about setting up the environments for our applications to run in. In that same earlier lecture, we also talked about application services. They would be part of this domain. The last of our 4 domains is the sell-consume domain. In this domain, the data objects communicate what consumers get and what it costs if there is a consumer cost. In the last lecture, we spoke of service offerings. Those offerings are part of this section. Service owners orchestrate the coordination across all 4 of these domains. They're the maestro of the domains. The Common Service Data Model brings everything we talked about so far together. Do you remember in the Service Owners, the Service Broker lecture, we talked about all of the different people? You can see some of those people that we talked about in the foundation section. Contract coordinators, partner managers, people that own business processes. You could see more in the design section. Here we talked about the enterprise or cloud architects, and the technology leaders, maybe even the CIO and the application owners. In the technical section, they're data center teams that take care of running of applications. We talked about application service owners, and those application service owners may even work with others that host their technologies. Finally, in the sell-consume area, you have the front line to the consumer. The business relationship managers to gather and validate requirements, and customer service managers to make sure your digital service does everything it's advertised to do. There is a saying about digital solutions. It's 70% about the people, or the stakeholders. It's 20% about the business process that gets defined, and it's 10% about what you use to put it all together. And that's what we're talking about today, the Common Service Data Model. The Common Service Data Model goes beyond the people and into the parts of the digital service that they're responsible for. In between the data objects in each of the domains, you can see how relationships between them are indicated by arrows. As service owners, you won't be required to know every managed object and every relationship in every domain. Much of what you'll need to know is dictated by the type of service you own. A service owner that serves customers, employees, or departments should master the sell-consume domain. Service owners that own the application services should know both the design and manage tech services. And a service owner that owns a technology, such as a database delivery team or a server delivery team, they're mostly interested in that technical domain. What is the one thing missing from all these models that we're talking about today, all these different domains? It's the consumers. The consumers you see in between the domains that interact with catalogs, just like the one that you'd see on Amazon. We call out consumers of the sell-consume services as well as consumers of the technical services that are usually used to create the sell-consume digital services. Does all this happen today? Of course, it has to happen today. You have to put all of these things together. A lot of people ask the question, so why bother with all this data model stuff? Why do we have to do all this if the service is already running? We have over 200 members of our digital services work group, and this is a consolidated list of what they had to say about why they bother with the common service data model. Can you imagine if everyone that needed an app had to have their own team to run it? Good thing we have teams that know how to do those things. Ideally, the CSDM is the start of your bill of materials that shows your total cost of ownership. When only documentation is email or spreadsheets, people don't know what's there. Everyone has a different idea of how to deliver apps and services. In the absence of a process, people make one up. And there's a lot of made up processes when you don't have a standard to follow. A lot of people say we have no idea if our technology is being used to its fullest. There must be a better way to see the faulty technology that causes problems with the service. Today, a lot of people just call everybody and say, we have a problem, it's not working, and they all get together. If we build this from one department, why don't other departments use it, right? We should redesign for reuse as much as we can. What value are we getting from our technology? A lot of people don't know that answer. Who is responsible for contract renewals, server desk response times, availability? Are we really doing things that are priorities? And if so, is our spending for that priority in line with where it should be? I have others that I'd put on this list, such as security alignment and readiness for artificial intelligence, automation, but I thought this top 10 list from the work group was a pretty good starting point. This is a quick look at what a completed common service data model might look like. Usually these types of models are done by enterprise architects or somebody acting in that role. You can see they're offering to set up a SharePoint, and they're advertising that in the catalog as well. This allows everyone in the organization to use it without bothering with things like hardware, licensing, support, and other things that it takes to set up. The other parts you're seeing for the first time are different types of dependencies that describe relationships. These relationship descriptions help to support repeatable business processes such as change, impact assessment, or even fault isolation. My favorite parts of the common service data model are: 1, it gives us a practical recipe for mapping technology to the needs of the organization. Number 2, it doesn't interfere with any framework, reference architecture, or other guidance that your organization is already using. And number 3, it gets everyone in the whole organization thinking of services as the primary digital assets and not applications. People forget that applications are useless until they're configured for your organization. People also forget that applications can be set up to provide many different services. It's not a one-to-one mapping. In our next lecture, we'll elaborate on how to offer services to consumers through a catalog, and we'll start with the common service data model as our launching point.